Hi, I'm John Stevens,
This is Matt Russell.
and this is Pod Have Mercy.
This is Pod Have Mercy.
So, I'm John Stevens, and I am the pastor of Chapelwood United Methodist Church in Houston, Texas. And this podcast, Pod Have Mercy, is something we've been talking about doing for a long time. And it's really not just around what we're doing at Chapelwood, but really it's a discussion that's far broader than that, as I've talked about.
Yes.
So in thinking about what does the church look like these next 80 some odd years of the 21st century, because the old model, the institutional model, organizational model that was kind of created in the mid 20th century of churches on corners, you open the door, everyone comes in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now we're seeing more secularization, more people who are less affiliated to Christianity, people who don't attend church anymore, and a younger generation that's just doesn't see relevancy in the church at all. Yeah. So how do we have a conversation and exploration about what the church is really supposed to be in this world, what the church is always supposed to be, plugged into something relevant, something real, something that's impacting the world around us.
Yeah.
Did that sound smart?
That sounds really smart.
Okay, good.
Because you are smart. I think a podcast is the ability to keep a conversation going throughout the week. And that's what I find preaching and good preaching is about, is really kind of this conversation, this public dialogues. And so I think podcasts are ways of kind of continuing that on. And I think you're right, John, in the sense that the world is changing and people, evangelism used to be, we've got it, you need it, how about it, right? And I think it's changed in that people are going to yoga studios and are finding a deep, resonant spirituality. They're meditating. They're going to gyms or different, Soul Cycle. So there's 1,000 different ways that people are gathering and are doing something while feeding their soul. Mm-hmm. And I think the church has just assumed that we have the product. And that we can just...
well, we used to.
Yeah.
So if you think about before internet, before technology, before podcasting, before all this stuff, your spiritual content delivery was that 1 hour on Sunday morning in that building on the corner.
That's right.
That had the cross on the top of it. Mm-hmm. And so that's where you went. You made a point to get there. You connected with people in your community, which now you have so many other ways to connect with people that are in your community.
That's right.
Outside of, religious affiliation, but it was also content delivery. So now you think about, I can get this content anytime I want it, anywhere I want it. I can wake up in the morning and drink my cold brew.
By Stumptown?
Yeah, I can drink my cold brew, and I can sit in the bed in my pajama bottoms.
That's right.
And I can either stream it live, or I can stream it on Tuesday, or I can stream it on my, treadmill, like you said, or my Peloton. It's a cult, by the way. Peloton is a cult.
It's an expensive cult.
Well, all cults are expensive.
One way or the other, it's going to cost
you a large toll. But when you think about a culture that's more secularized, highly secularized, and everybody says that's when you're kind of inside of institutional religion, you look at that as the enemy. But man, when you look at like the Gospels, it's like we talked about this weekend at Chapelwood. When you see Jesus having interactions with institutional religious leaders,
yes,
and it didn't always go well. Rarely went well.
Did it ever go well?
But then all the people that were out already in the world, the broken people, the people that were, defined as outside the spaces and the places that were, appropriate for good people to be.
Yeah.
That's where Jesus was.
That's right.
And so when we think about, think about this whole season of almost the entire 20th century, where institutional religion became sort of the center of American culture, and we built these huge, massive buildings. And we have one, in these locations, and then we just depended on everyone to come to us. And we still did mission work. We still went out into the community, but what was the motivation or the rationale for that? It was good, but it was almost like we went out and we did it and then we came back.
Yeah.
Whereas when you look at in the Gospels at Jesus, he goes out, he doesn't go out and do it and then come back, kind of say, hey, I did my good thing. And he's like living with them, shaped with them, shaping them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. And to be Christian are the sent ones. We're sent out, right? And so there's a sense in which I think the 21st century is reclaiming really the intention of the Spirit that sends us out into the world.
So I think a large part of this thing is like rethinking. It's just rethinking church. It's just rethinking how we are the church in the world. Speaks to another thing is this cultural influence on the church. And man, you look at like politics and how they move into the farthest corners of polarization, as far. I mean, it's just, and the way they talk to each other.
Yeah.
It's like, where is this kind of a loving sense of dialogue, even though we may disagree. You and I may disagree on something, but couldn't we sit down and have like a kind conversation about that?
As if the most important thing about us are the things we disagree about, right? So we've elevated those disagreements to be central, rather than to say, there's so many other things that we haven't, there's so many other things that the world's in need of that we could get busy with and work that stuff out as we go.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole cancel culture, or you only define yourself nowadays by what you're against. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at the news channels, and at night, it doesn't matter which one you pick. You pick whichever one you want. But those opinion shows at night, and even really kind of the whole day now, it's like, okay, we're not going to come tell you what we're for. We're just going to tell you what we're against. Yeah. How we're against that guy or against that woman. I mean, it's kind of life stealing if you think about it. Yeah.
Part of what it means to be Christian is, maybe a lot of what it means to be Christian is to be developed in this new way, the kingdom, which is, it's not like, you've heard it said, I tell you, you've heard it said, hate your enemies. I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you.
What Jesus was doing there, he wasn't canceling the old stuff. Mm-mm. It wasn't like, he wasn't like, all that's going to throw out, and we're going to start something completely new. He's fulfilling.
Yes.
So he's not dismissing it. He's kind of getting at the heart of what was always meant by that.
Yes.
And so it's like, I think, it's kind of hard being a pastor for a long time and being a part of a church. It's kind of hard for me to trash organizational and institutional church, although I do it pretty regularly.
Yeah, and
I've gotten pretty good at it. But because there's value in organizations, value in something being instituted.
Yes.
But the problem is, as soon as you do that, your mindset changes from mission to maintenance.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden you're trying to hold on and maintain everything.
Yes.
And man, that is like so opposite of the gospel.
Yeah, right.
And Jesus was always about letting go, not grasping.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's the hard part is that, all the powers, the Pharisees, the scribes, was they were holding on. They didn't want to lose kind of the world they knew. Mm-hmm. And so, they were confronted. Ultimately, they killed him for it.
Yeah.
Hopefully, they won't kill us.
Well, maybe if we do it right, they will. Is that the sign?
Is that what you aspire to? I mean, that's the question you have to ask
yourself. We're all going to go
yourself.
out some way. I'd rather,
go out on a burning stake?
Yeah. Something dramatic.
A head lopped off. Religion in America, but particularly Christianity in America, we're going through identity crisis. We're going through a metamorphosis of a change. And the difficulty is that I think healthy congregations will struggle with this, and they will make that next step into this really risky territory.
Yes.
Unknown, scary place. Yes. But there's going to be a lot of churches. Because the thing about churches is they're built around stability too.
Yes.
I mean, it's sanctuary. It's sanctuary. You go in to protect yourself from all the influences of the world that scare you, right?
Yeah.
So you go in and you find sanctuary, you find rest, but the problem is if that becomes your identity and you don't then also are sent out into the world to see yourselves as that sent people, then you just perish.
Yes. Will we break open into things that we don't know? Will mystery lead us? Or will we retract back into what works, double down, shove some things down, and then go backwards in a sense, right? And I think that the life of the church is at a place where all of the tradition that we've had has led us to this point. We've needed it all. And whether it's Phyllis Tickle or these other folks that are talking about the emergence, every 500 years there's a breaking open, that there's this breaking open, and it makes us afraid because, like you'd said, the foundations are shifting.
Yeah.
But if the one that calls that creates the foundations, that speaks water and then walks on it into existence, calls us out of the boat of our stability, we can follow that one. And I think that's the call that I hear you talking about in the life of the church, that we're called to move beyond the structures of the stability and into this risk-taking God.
Yeah. And I think that's I'm excited about, the conversations that we're going to have.
Yeah.
And other people will be involved in these conversations too. I think that's going to be exciting, because this podcast is going to be about having these larger conversations, not to get, I mean, there'll be times we'll talk about specific things. We'll talk about stuff going on in the world, specific, tangible things. I mean, we have to. That's the intersection, and that's a translation of of the word in the world, Jesus in the world. But at the same time, I mean, I want us to have a conversation that elevates us, that inspires us, inspires me and you, and the people that we have conversations with.
Let's run into the we're not really strangers questions, and I just selected some random ones.
Is that these? We turn these over?
Yeah, turn those over, and then we can go with all of them, or maybe just the one that you feel is most...
Do we ask each other the same questions? Or
no.
Yeah. So I'll start. What is your defining characteristic?
What is my defining characteristic?
This is a hard question.
Holy schmoly, John. I thought we were keeping it light.
I thought so too, but this is...
Defining character. That's not on this.
You have different questions.
We
have different questions.
Good straight.
No, you don't get to see them in advance. You have to answer
my defining characteristic?
Your defining characteristic.
My defining characteristic.
All right, so on next week's episode, Matt Russell will come back after he's talked to his wife to share with us his defining characteristic. After he calls his parents and all of his friends from college and talks to
his identity crisis sets in. My defining characteristic. There's a part of me that thinks it's my laugh. I have this real serious side to me, but it's like punctured easily by laughter. And I think so. My mom got sick when I was growing up, and she was hilarious. And so early on, nothing was sacred in our house. It could not be laughed at, and so everything was open to be joked at. And I think it's because we were around somebody that was dying, but that was also experiencing life at the same time. And so laughter in the midst of pain was, I think, is something that's a defining characteristic.
That's awesome. Yeah, you get an A on that.
Thank you, John. Yeah. What dating advice would you give your younger self?
What dating advice would I give my younger self?
Go Dutch.
Once again, as I look back, I think I did it all right the first time. So I'm not really. No, I'm just kidding. There are actually a couple of girls that would say that's not correct.
Jody's on the line. First time caller.
First time caller.
Go ahead, Jody.
I think for my younger self, I think I would have said date more.
Yeah.
When you're young, when you're young, it's like everything is like it was when you're old too. When you're young, it's like everything is so intense and serious. It's like, oh, I like you, and it's like we're gonna be together for the rest of our lives, and it can't be anyone else. And then your heart's broken, and then the next thing you're projecting on the next person that's gonna be the rest of your life. I would say, date and do it more casually. Just experience all the different types of people out there.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I think that's what I would say.
Absolutely, yeah. Youth, what is it Twain that says that youth is wasted on the young?
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to go back and if I knew now, what I know now.
So that dream you have, it's like, if I could go back in time, I would, but only if I could take everything I know now. Because I don't want to go back dumb as stick.
Again.
Dumbass. Go back and make all the stupid mistakes all over again. I'm not interested in that. I'll stay 50 and keep going forward. No, thank you. I don't need to start from 14.
No.
Unless you give me some knowledge. You just give me half the knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't need it all.
Yeah. So, John, how do you keep your hair so soft and supple?
It's
manageable
Goldwell. Goldwell.
Goldwell.
Pod Have Mercy is also sponsored by
Goldwell.
Goldwell for all your hairstyling needs. What do you do for your look?
Today,
I mean, just in general, you have this nice semi-Jesus-y hair thing going on.
So it's I wash it, I slap a little Aveda in it, and then I go.
Okay.
That's it.
See, that's so cool.
Takes me 2.5 seconds.
See, that's so cool because it's just like,
Just.
I don't care, but I really do.
But I do. But I
do
spent
a lot,
4 hours caring. But I want you don't. I don't really care.
See, mine is slowly becoming more and more gray.
Yeah, because you're a senior pastor.
Yeah. If you look at a picture of me when I came here in 2014.
Yeah. You look like a 13-year-old.
Yeah, I do, literally. It's like ever since 2015 and the Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriage, it's like now I have this big white streak through the middle of. I mean, I have this skunk stripe.
It looks good.
And I'm like, this is like if you ever wanted to prove stress,
right? It's like every
it's
president
right here
ever.
on my head. I mean, I will literally show you pictures. I had like black hair. So this week, what have you been doing? That's what we're supposed to be talking about. So a friend of mine, he's actually the pastor at St. Luke's United Methodist Church here in Houston, Texas, Tom Pace. You know him a little bit? You know him? You know Tom?
Yeah.
So he shared with me a little article that he had written about, a traditional pastor. What I mean by just think not traditional in the sense of just how do we live as pastors now in this countercultural church. And the point he makes is that we live in this world where everything's red versus blue, Republican versus Democrat, conservative versus progressive, white versus black or brown or whatever. It's all these, here again, everything moving out to the edges, the polarization. And he said, the easiest thing, if you are a preacher at a church, the easiest thing to do is to go all in on one side. Homogeneity. Yeah. It's like we're going all in to be this kind of church with this kind of message. We're not going to try to hold everybody together. And what happens is you're going to have some people that you're going to tick off, a certain segment. But if you go all in, if you're only about growth and you're only about, those people will leave. And you kind of know when people come in, it's easier to manage that when everybody's kind of got the groupthink thing going on.
That's right.
And it used to be that when we were the church and we were speaking prophetically, we would go out into the edges, into the margins. Like you said earlier about, it would shine light on the places and the spaces that as we moved out of kind of the settled center of where we were, right? So it would push us out. That's what the prophet did. That's what the prophetic voice of the church did. Shine light on racism, shine light on, in the civil rights, we haven't been perfect in those areas and we still have a long way to go.
That's right.
But the churches that did it well, you look at MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., the Christianity that shines a light on something in the edge, in the margin that we needed to move toward, right? So now what Tom is saying in this article, I think it's fascinating to me, is that now the countercultural leadership is in the center. What if the point is to be faithful? Even if it means lower numbers, smaller budgets. Right. What if being a loving church, loving all sorts of people, is what it really means now to be a countercultural community in a polarized culture? What if we had a vision of a church that people that come to a community of faith that includes conservative and progressives, old and young, rich and poor, gay and straight, white and black and brown, zealot and tax collector. He says, could it be that this community would provide welcome relief to the crowds, as Jesus said in Matthew 9, the crowds who were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd? I resonate with what he wrote because he's talking about what you see when you look at all these Pew Research studies about why people are disaffiliating from religion in America.
Sure.
Is because they see hypocrisy, they see judgmentalism, they see irrelevancy, and now it's like, I said on Sunday, it's like, everybody, we always used to say, you got to get out of the box. You got to get out of the box. You got to get out of the box. So everybody's already gotten out of the box, and they've moved so far on the extreme. And it's almost like, hey, it's time to get back in the box. There's nobody in the box. There actually are a lot of people that would find this wonderful new life
Yeah.
in the midst of this polarized world that we live in. Because the reality is, when you sit down at Thanksgiving with your family or at the dinner table just in your home with your kids, man, I've heard this so many times. On any issue that you talk about, you're not all in the same place.
No.
You know?
No.
And so this vision of unity, not uniformity, but unity, is only way we're going to find some beauty. That's the new countercultural revolution.
That's right. That's right. And if the center of that, like you had said on Sunday, is love, compassion, the center of that is the one that not just is loving, but instantiates the very experience of whatever love is. That's the one that's drawing us into that, right? And so then, and we have this idea that that love is this kind of weak force, right? And I wonder if it's the love of God, the love of our neighbor, the love of the world that God loves, that draws us into the pain and into the margins of the world, into the experience of the world where they're at, right? And so then I think as a pastor in an emerging culture, it's less of being a gatekeeper and more of being a seer. What do we see? Right?
Yeah.
What do we see that and that's what you had said on Sunday, like in the Gospel of John, this notion about a blind being given sight, right? Light coming onto darkness. This idea of what there's a poet, the Spanish poet Antonio Machado, who says all of Jesus's words can be summed up in the one word: wake up. And so it's this waking up into a new world that says, this is the world. Beautiful and terrible things will happen.
You know, I told you wrong 2 weeks ago when I said the first words of Jesus were "come and see."
Oh, no.
The second words.
Because I preached that, dude.
No, it did, but it fits.
Okay.
The first words of Jesus in the Gospel of John is, "What are you looking for?
Oh, yeah.
What are you seeking?"
Yeah.
And they said
A question.
They answered, and he said, "Come and see." That was his response.
Right.
So everything was about sight. What are you looking for?
Yeah.
And then he says, come and see, which is come and experience.
Yeah.
Come, follow me,
Yeah.
and we'll see this. And that sight is connected to light, is connected to belief.
That's so good.
And in the Gospel of John, and for Jesus, I think in just period, belief is not some intellectual assent.
No.
That's what people get it wrong.
Yeah.
This is why we're so legalistic in our culture.
Yeah.
Is because we're in our Western mindset. I think it's so culturally driven. Is that the relation that Eastern understanding, which Christianity is an Eastern religion.
Eastern religion, yes.
By the way, hello. It's like this. It's this transcendent experience
Yes.
of a living God.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And yet we've turned it into, rules and a rule book, and we've become the temple police.
That's right. I wonder if that's part of the journey that the Enlightenment took us on, to where we reduced everything in the Enlightenment that I think, therefore I am. And so what we've done is we've elevated thought away from experience. And we said, here's what it means to be a Christian. You believe these things. Well, then you read Matthew 25 and it just punches you square in the nose, because Jesus ends up saying, many will come to me on that day and say, Lord, Lord, I cast out demons in your name. Basically, I did all these things in your name. And the master will say, hey, did I meet you at a cocktail party? Because I don't know who you are, dude. But those that were involved in these experiences of where the hungry were, where the prisoners were, where the immigrants were those that were down on their luck were, and standing in that place of solidarity, moving in that place of love, then Jesus says, that's where I was.
That's where he is now.
Yes.
And so the thing
Yes.
is that, we're around all these churches. I read about a church recently in Texas, and they're going to have a major politician who's associated with a major politician is going to be like Sunday morning. They're going to sit there and talk about, their faith, but also like their particular view of religion and politics. And it's just so alienating.
Yeah.
And it's like you talk about, Jesus never wanted us to put our trust in the temporal powers.
No.
Of presidents and senators and congressmen and judges. And now we find a whole culture that's willing to totally look the other way.
Yeah.
on character issues, and again, we've turned everything to a binary choice.
That's right.
They say, oh, you don't want this president? Oh, you'll take this other one? And they find the worst example, you'll take that one?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm just, there's more options than that.
Yeah.
And it's like, there has to be.
Yeah. And if we're called to a different and another kingdom that is to be on earth, that we are to work and love ourselves into existence with, the kingdom of God, then those things will call to task any other kingdom, any other empire, any other allegiance, right? And so, and I think what is Jim Wallace said, the problem with American Christianity is just that. It's American Christianity, right? Is that we've put on these cultural things where I think part of the call of the gospel is for us to stand in the world and love the world, and also be a prophetic voice and an alternative imagination about the way that we love, about the way that we hold relationships in tension.
The hard part I've found, though, is when you start talking that way, people think you don't love America. They hear you because, and what I say to people is, man, I love America. I love my country.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to live in any other country in the world.
Yeah.
But you still, doesn't matter. You still cannot allow that culture to like take over the culture of Christianity. It's not.
Right.
It's always over and above.
Yes.
Your patriotism.
Right.
And some people find it hard to like think about that.
Yeah.
Because if you read the Gospels, you're going to find a lot of stuff that Jesus will counter.
Yes.
That we in our culture lift up and laud and point to and praise and say, hey, go team.
Yeah.
And Jesus is not about that.
No.
So that I think is the hard part. But I dream. I was at a meeting recently with large pastors from across the Southeast in the Methodist Church. And what was fascinating is hearing them talk about how their churches are very diverse. And they don't like these binary choices of this corner or that corner.
Yeah.
This exactly what we're talking about is the dream of unity. And so the vision and the discussion is about how do we not play by those rules? How do we start talking about a vision that's Christocentric, that's Christ-centered, that's mission-driven, that's about evangelization of the world, and allow us to focus on those things that are far bigger issues than over these non-essential, non-creedal kind of arguments that we have about so many things that want to divide us. These are people who serve diverse contexts, exactly what we're talking about. They're trying to say, we want to be the countercultural movement that moves back into the center and says, we can disagree and yet be one.
That's right.
Together.
That's right. That's right. That's the call of the gospel always. I love, was it John 14 that you brought up that which is really the Lord's Prayer, may they be one.
John 17, yeah.
John, thank you.
Thank you. You can quote a lot more fancy names than I can.
But I don't know chapter and verses and stuff, man. As I read my Bible back in Chapelwood.
Hey, son, I grew up in South Georgia. I can help you on the Bible.
I know my Bible.
All right, so here's my current event for the week.
Okay.
Coronavirus, go.
Dude, don't cough on me.
Well, and also, listen, do not go on a cruise.
Right?
It is a floating petri dish. If this didn't cure you, I don't know how the cruise industry is going to make it now. I mean, honestly. I mean, can you imagine it's going to be really cheap.
Yes.
$59.99.
The Corona Cruise.
You can sail out of Galveston, Texas. $59.99 for a 7-day, all-inclusive.
For 70 days.
70 days. Well, it's a 7-day that could potentially become a 2-month lockdown in your room. Yeah, coronavirus, man. It's
a real thing.
It is a real thing. That was very profound. It's a real thing.
I don't have an opinion on it.
I think it's fake news.
I don't have an opinion on it.
I don't.
It's bad? It's bad.
It's not good. Yeah, wash your hands regularly.
Yeah.
And if you have we're both doctors.
If you, as my son will say, but Dad, you're a fake doctor. You know?
Yeah, I was on a plane last week, and the lady, she got kind of faint and air sickness. It wasn't anything serious, but it was like a medical emergency. There was a doctor on the plane, and I'm like, no, that's when I go. No, I'm not a doctor that can actually help anybody. So
that's right.
What are we up to this week? I am headed to Oklahoma City.
Woohoo!
I know.
Wow.
I'm so
How'd you draw that straw,
excited.
bro?
There's like a church meeting that's
Okay.
there that I have to go to for like this jurisdictional type
You're
thing.
just stoked, aren't you?
No, not at all. But my daughter, Maddie,
Okay.
is at the University of Oklahoma.
Okay.
Which is just suburb of Oklahoma City. So I'm going to go up tomorrow, day early.
Oh, that's
and
great.
we're going to eat dinner 2 nights.
Oh,
So I mean,
great.
if there's, better that I get to go there and do this than I don't know, Little Rock,
Yeah,
Arkansas.
where your
No
daughter
offense to Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm sure it is a beautiful town.
to our fans in Little Rock, we
Or
love you.
Topeka, Kansas is a beautiful state, but I'm just saying I get to go to a place where my daughter is.
That's awesome.
And so get to kind of hang out and visit with her. So that's what I'm doing this week. In the midst of all this other stuff I'm going to be doing that will not be fun, I get to do that, which
Your daughter.
will be fun.
That's great. That's great. I am. I'm still kind of adjusting to Chapelwood and being back, which has just been great. And so I've got a bunch of meetings, and part of that is that we're getting ready for our book release at the Museum of Fine Arts in May. And so we're meeting with the museum and a bunch of other students.
Is this with Iconoclast?
This
right?
is with the Iconoclast artist that is
Great.
a ministry of Chapelwood now that is reaching out to really under-resourced schools in Spring Branch and surrounding areas. So
We're going to have to spend some time, I know, in the future when we do this on some other podcast to talk about, the
it.
great work that's going on with these Curate, Iconoclast, and other things. But that's just great. So you're getting ready for that this week.
We're kind of gearing up for that. We'll have about, hopefully, close to 900 to 1,000 folks at the Museum of Fine Arts May 7th, and the books that we all all go to a scholarship fund for these kids.
Great,
in these
that's
schools.
awesome.
So I'm excited about it. It's great stuff.
That's so
that
cool.
the church would love these kids into a better future. So.
Yeah, that's great. So for those of you on News Channel 2 who have videoed in, this is Pod Have Mercy. This is Matt Russell when he was younger. You look a lot like John Stamos.
Well, it's my mullet days. Business in the front, party in the back.
Yeah.
That's,
Gosh, you were really handsome, man.
I was.
You were
I've let myself go.
Well, this has been fun. So I'm really excited about this journey we're going to be on. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about a lot of things. And I'm really excited about the potential of bringing a lot of voices in with us as well.
Yes.
And to talk about really just to a broad celebration of just how I think we're being called to live into this future as the church, to be relevant, to be meaningful. Yeah. And so I'm John Stevens.
And I'm Matt Russell.
And this is Pod Have Mercy.